I'm Greg, and you're listening to Totally Preventable.
Totally preventable.
Totally preventable.
Totally preventable. Totally preventable.
Totally preventable.
Totally preventable.
Hey, Polly.
Hey, Greg, how are you?
I'm all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Today we have a great guest. He's going to, I met him at Katka,
Oh, yeah.
and he's going to break down this new technology. Well, I don't know how new it is, but it's new to me. And it's the RX Destroyer. We're having Jordan Brown come in.
Oh, yeah.
So that was the magic solution.
The goo.
Put
It's like
your,
a goo.
exactly.
Yeah.
Put your,
I should do their marketing.
you should. Here, we're selling you the goo that makes pills go away. So it's a nice alternative to our drug take back.
Yeah.
And I believe you can have an individual size. It doesn't have to be a big size, but maybe this is, for those police departments or fire stations that don't want to have big box. Maybe this is an alternative.
Interesting.
Yeah. So without further ado, today on the Totally Preventable podcast, we have the Director of Strategic Partnerships of RX Destroyer, Mr. Jordan Brown. Jordan, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Our pleasure. Let's start this off by you just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am a country boy. I live in Wisconsin, and I enjoy anything outdoors. So nature is super important to me. You'll probably hear that theme throughout even today and me talking about it. But I love anything that I can do around water or competitive sports outside. And then in the medical world, I've been with RX Destroyer for just under 4 years, and have really dove into this. And it's not something you wake up one day and you're like, you know what, I'm probably going to go work for this, company that sells this one specific thing, and it's my life goal. And then you get into it and you realize, like, wow, this is an incredible field and incredible people that you meet, and that even starts to carve who you are and that kind of stuff too. So that's a little bit about myself.
Cool.
So I heard you say that you like the environment. So I'm guessing that correlates to why it's not good to flush your medication down the toilet.
Yeah. So I can give you a little bit, and most of the stuff just take with a grain of salt. This is my educated opinion. I'm YouTube certified in most educational areas. So take that with it. Yeah. So, flushing it down the toilet really was something that was advertised by, FDA and some different, government entities as a way to, like, hey, prevent harm.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day, that was like a best case scenario, was to flush it, because we didn't really think about potential repercussions down the road. And today we've learned that it is totally preventable to keep this out of the water and the soil and out of nature through other channels besides flushing it or draining it down your sink. If I can give you a quick history lesson,
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
RX Destroyer came from the commercial side of things. So that means we work with places like hospitals and long-term care facilities and places like that. Well, a federal law came into effect in 2014 that required DEA registrants to render a drug non-retrievable. So in a situation, if I said to you, hey, if you flush this or drain this, could you or I retrieve that? The answer is no. Like, I can't go into my toilet, reach through the entire sewer system and get all that back. I've checked the box as asked. Fast forwarding to 2019, the EPA said, whoa, hold on a second. There's a lot of people flushing and draining. And again, we're talking the commercial side. And while they realized, like, we have to put a stop to that too, there has to be a different solution. So in 2019, the EPA on the DEA registrant side banned flushing and draining, because they recognized what was happening to the water levels of pharmaceutical drugs that were going into it. If every hospital in the country is flushing fentanyl, where's that going? And what's the effect of that? Coming to the, community side, this is where we say, like, it is totally preventable. You can do something different with those substances in your home versus flushing or draining it and keeping it out of the water or the soil. Like, you look at problems like Flint, Michigan, and just to name one, I mean, everyone in the country has heard of that crisis. But anyone that tests their water, will find some level of something, because there's not a perfect municipal water filtration system that exists today, besides, carbon and reverse osmosis and all of these very expensive things. So it is near and dear to me to advise not to flush and not to drain it down the sink.
Awesome.
I did hear, I guess a couple of years ago, there were some studies on some shellfish. And that the shellfish were absorbing opioids from a water base where I think water was flowing out into the ocean, or I don't know. I haven't, it's been a couple of years, but because there's such filters of filtration of the water that they were.
Yeah, and it's common that large plants will use, whether it's ocean or the Great Lakes, to filter or cool their systems, right? Because it gets so hot, they need to cool it with the hydro, and then that discharge water or whatever will get returned. It does go through a filtration system, but it's not perfect. If you look at, again, I mentioned I live in the Midwest, and you look at some of our surrounding lakes, they advise you only to eat, so many salmon a year because of things like mercury level or whatever it may be. It may not be related to a flushing and draining specific, but that is to say, this is what's going on with filtration. Now imagine if every household did something that they could totally prevent and stopped flushing and draining. So that could be a huge environmental checkbox that's super easy to overcome.
Wow. Now, you mentioned that you've been with RX Destroyer for just under 4 years. What is RX Destroyer?
So RX Destroyer is a product that comes in a variety of different sizes that's used anytime someone would like to get rid of unused, unwanted, or expired medications or drugs. And that's very well rounded. So there's a lot of things that fit into that checkbox. Again, commercial side, you've got like pills, patches, lozenges, creams, suppositories, liquids, things like that. And then maybe there's something in the home that is either wanted or unwanted. And this product gives you that option to, dispose of this without having to flush or drain, while chemically rendering that substance non-retrievable, so that it can prevent that from harming anyone else. So inside of that bottle is a liquid formula, and it's a dissolving agent, and then activated charcoal. So what's happening is kind of a chemical process known as chemical digestion. Fancy.
It is, and I'm hungry, so I'm kind of like,
Well, to speak on hunger, our product works just like your stomach. So as you eat food and you digest it, right, the acids or the pH in your body digests food.
Yep.
And it gets processed. That's what happens inside of our bottle. Is you put the medication in, it's going to break down like your stomach does, and then that activated charcoal or carbon that's in there will adsorb, and that's very different than absorb. So absorb is like where you wipe something with a towel and you can wring it back out and retrieve it.
Yeah.
Adsorb is a chemical one-way trip where it's going to get captured into that carbon, and then it's again rendered non-retrievable, so it's not available for misuse.
I had never heard the word adsorb. At first, I thought you were saying absorb, but
so with a D, yep, adsorb.
All right.
And now, while we're talking about our stomachs and eating it, while we were at CADCA, which big conference we all go to, we saw you there, and I made some wise guy comment about, hey, can you eat that? And whoever you had at the table was like, you sure can. It is non-toxic. Would you like to see me drink it?
Yeah, that was so
we were like,
we do our best. So Milton Dallas is our CEO, and we do our best to keep him away from the public as best as possible. But when he gets out, it's he's going to show up and show out. And so Milt actually is the inventor and creator behind the RX Destroyer, and it is safe and non-toxic. And the first time I saw that at a trade show, I was kind of like, yeah, I'll do that too. I'm just like blindly trusting this man I just met, and I'm still standing today. But it is safe and non-toxic. So again, the dissolving agent has a pH that again will act like your stomach to dissolve something. And that activated charcoal is the same stuff they use when they pump your stomach. This same concept of like in the hospital, like when you overdose or you have like alcohol poisoning, they're using that for adsorption to get that out of your body, to have you projectile that, out of your system and have that carbon clasp onto all that stuff and pull that with it. Or if somebody was to pass the carbon through their system, it would clean all the way through, and it's not picky. Again, going back to the stomach, at 12 a.m. when you open the fridge, you don't care what's in there. You're just hungry and you're going to eat. That's what carbon does. It goes, I don't care if this is a good nutrient, if it's a bad or harmful nutrient, I'm taking everything with me when I go. So either way, top or bottom, the goal of that carbon when they pump your stomach is to remove all that stuff.
Mhm.
That's the goal of the bottle when you put that pill inside of it, is to adsorb it and remove it.
I am going to be using Adsorb all day today.
You are?
When I can. I'm
You're
gonna be
gonna
using
have to
that
be
word.
like very like clear, absorb, or else
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking
I
about.
am gonna wait for my opportunity to strike whenever I can use it.
We have a couple English teachers here, so maybe we'll do a quiz.
Yeah.
There you go.
So we've read somewhere that ending addiction starts with RX Destroyer. Can you explain that?
Well, what we do like to say is that we need to be in that conversation. We know that RX Destroyer can't just be that magic that it will just end it, right? But what we do say is that removing the taboo, kind of stigma around talking about it, and then being open to friends and family who need help, and then having RX Destroyer, that is where it starts with ending the addiction and removing it from the home and removing it from opportunities for misuse or diversion, or accidental doctor being played, some of those things. So we believe that the end starts with, RX Destroyer.
Right. What is the importance of RX Destroyer?
Well, that is I think that's an entire podcast series,
Okay.
because I feel like when you look at where the product is targeted and what we're trying to prevent, you're now talking about something that can destroy families for generations.
Mm.
And truly it has to be looked at that scale, because again, commercial side, we're looking to just get the compliance box for that hospital. We're looking to prevent the diversion. We're looking for safety. In the community, we're looking to save somebody's life that could have a ripple effect of the children maybe that they have, or the parents that they have, or the friends and family that care about them that they have. And there's this window of opportunity sometimes when someone is in need of saving, and maybe as a friend or a coworker or something, I am slightly recognizing this opportunity, but I don't know what I can do or how I can do it or what words to say. And is this going to now be an awkward conversation forever because I brought it up? So RX Destroyer is a product that, literally you can use on your own, and you can make this change on your own, or someone who loves you or cares about you can give you this product without having to say anything else, because you can just read the directions on what it's for. Just say, hey, if you ever have this, need, here's the solution. And that's what I think, is really the difference of why RX Destroyer is important, because just from keeping the home safe, it trickles in back to the environment, the water, the soil, the crops, the future of, children. When you look at when kids get, tested, and there's different hormone levels, or there's different, things that are showing up in foods, or those are, the genes are kind of transforming. I have a client in Houston who has a fish pond, and it's behind this big industrial park. It took 2 years for 100% of the fish to die, because all of the fish turned to just one sex because of the testosterone levels in the water. So the fish couldn't reproduce because there was only one sex of species in there. So now when you say, well, how did that even happen? Like, what are you saying to me right now? Well, I'm saying that maybe, a better filtration system, better eyes on process or procedure, but then what could we have done with that testosterone to begin with that truly would have neutralized it like an RX destroyer, doesn't matter what scale we're talking. We could be talking a 4-ounce bottle in the home to save little Johnny down the street, or we could be talking, a massive corporation that needs to do something different besides dump levels of toxicity into water.
What type of industries does RX Destroyer work with? I know at the conference we saw you at, you had little bottles and big giant bottles, and we've been brainstorming like what we could use those big giant bottles for around here.
Sure.
Could not come up with anything.
So back in the day, when police stations first started taking kind of like the drug take back days, as far as the mailbox style locations that are available every day, not necessarily like a community announced take back. A lot of those were paid for with grant dollars to get those installed. So the police said, sure, hey, that's great. We'll take it. We'd love something for the community. And then somebody along the way realized, well, somebody has to empty these things. And then there's a cost involved with that. So now you're asking, for additional dollars to fund, the cleaning of that and the removal of that and the destruction of that. And the citizen gets to take something, and it's no longer their problem, but it is now somebody else's problem. And the journey of that is, 2 officers will weigh or measure the stuff. They'll potentially have to drive it to DOJ. In a lot of rural places could be hours. So you've got 2 officers for 4 hours one direction, 4 hours back. So you've paid 2 officers an entire day wages just to drive, medications to a burn site. That one that you saw at Ketka, that 5-gallon, something like that, based on like a 200 milligram, Advil sized tablet, could potentially do up to 15,000 pills.
Wow.
So you look at a police station or other DEA registrants that are registered as collectors or that are working through law enforcement for like a drug take back location. That's typically what that size is used for, because what's going to happen is that chain of custody of that drug, because it's been rendered non-retrievable, basically stops right there. And then once that product is full and it gets, basically thrown out, we're no longer having to spend all of those extra dollars on transporting, incinerating, counting, weighing, measuring, all of those pieces or components. So it's used everywhere from like school nurses, the end of the year when the kids get picked up by parents and the parents don't go grab all the medications, to correctional facilities, to high volume assisted living, facilities, places like that turn over a lot of volume, or potentially are even working with a lot of liquid that they're disposing of, which could be EMS, like on ambulances for morphine drips, IV drips, or even surgery centers when they go through all of their product. One surgery could potentially fill up half of one of those jugs.
Wow.
Do you know how much that big jug weighs?
So do you know how much a gallon of water weighs?
Oh, we just were talking about this, like 7 pounds.
You're pretty close. It's like, I think it's either 8.34 or 8.43. It's right
Okay.
around there. So let's round up, or let's just say 8. We'll round down and say 8. So that jug comes approximately 40% full.
Yeah.
It's a 5-gallon jug, so just shy of 20 pounds. And then if it was full, right, it's a 5-gallon container, so just under 40 pounds, roughly.
I had a theory because we had drug take back day here last weekend. Well, everyone did. And one of our towns only collected 4.5 pounds of unwanted medication. So I was thinking maybe they had the jug of RX Destroyer, and that's where it all went. But that throws my theory out.
Yeah. So the thing is with that is that the 5-gallon jug is a sweet spot for a large size.
Mhm.
The reason is because not only does it still can go into most trash receptacles. The average person can just pick this up and transport it and move it around. And the reusability, because it lasts for a year or until full for all of the sizes, but this large size can sustain, quite a lot of either patients or community involvement or whatever it may be, a lot of transactions, if you will. But it gives you that sweet spot to be able to take a variety of stuff being put in it as well.
Mhm.
The opening size and things like that. So that's why that's commonly used as a drug take back location. The other challenge that we see is just with drug take back itself, like that one day. I'm sure we'll dive into that later, but we would love, police, fire, whoever can register as a collector to just keep one of these 5 gallons or maybe even our 1 gallon with the wall mount available for the citizens to just come back and dump their stuff in it.
How does this fill up? Like how I'm just seeing pills, you throw pills in, does it disintegrate and break down the pill?
Yep.
And just keeps rising as the pill residue?
You got it. And going back to that stomach example, it is literally like if you had a pizza sliced 8 slices and you start eating the slices, your body is literally breaking down each slice. You're filling up as you go. It's, same thing that's happening as you put those pills in the bottle. It's breaking it down and it's filling up until it's full, just like we get full from eating. And at some point there's the capacity. The nice thing is pills dissolve and they break down so fine, and they're getting adsorbed into carbon that's already there, so it's creating essentially kind of like more space, since matter can't be created nor destroyed. There's a finite amount that you can put in it, but it allows you to put tons of different sizes of things in it, and that's where you can visually see how full it is, and you just know that's the indicator that says, hey, this is full, I need to exchange it or use a different one.
I like that because some other products that we've seen is like a one-use kind of like once you activate it, it's
Sure.
This you can just keep adding to over however long you need it to use it.
Yep. So there's a handful of products that exist today on the market. Kind of the prideful thing for us is that we're the patent holder on the ready to use liquid solution. And we say the directions for us is take the cap off and you're pretty much, you're well trained. There is a huge market out there for a need for drug disposal. So we recognize that as a company, and we know that competitors in the space make the space healthy, because I think people should have choices and you should be able to determine what you think is the best. I will sit here and tell you that, I feel that we are the best for many different reasons, from science to testing of data to ready to use to the sizing we have available to pick what size you actually need for the job you're trying to overcome. And then from us as a team and what we're willing to do and what we put into it daily through education. Offline, if you guys reached out and said, hey, could you train me on X, Y, and Z? We would just set that up and do that for you. If a coalition wanted information and they just wanted a demonstration or they wanted to learn, or they had somebody that they wanted to train, we would help with that. So we carry it way beyond just the product. And it's super important to us to really educate so that when you do run into those other choices in the market, you make the most informed decision for you. And we've done our job to prepare you with the education and the science to say, hey, when I use RX Destroyer, I know it's going to work. It's going to work every time. And I can use this for an entire year until this product is either full or that time comes up.
Wow.
And then you just throw it away. You don't have to jump through any hoops with it. You just throw it away.
Yeah. So there's 2 types of individuals in the world as it relates to disposal. So there's what's called a DEA registrant, and then there's just the citizen.
Yeah.
So the citizen falls under no regulations. So they're not, Big Brother isn't watching whatever they do in the home. They're just advised to throw it out. The registrant can throw this product out in certain states with certain non-hazard medications, but they have a different set of rules that they have to follow because they're hitting that compliance checkbox for the DEA.
Yeah.
And if these bottles are found, I throw my RX Destroyer in the trash. Some wise guy finds it. Oh, I know what this is. Opens it up. There's no potency to what's in the container.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is as you use it, it's going to sludge up, and when it's full, it's going to make a really kind of gross paste as it is. If that paste were to ever leak out or like spill out, as you're mentioning, whether it's the soil, the ground, the water, whatever it is, if there was any available pores left within the carbon, it's going to actually still continue to absorb things. If someone were to digest it, they probably would get sick, kind of like how, again, they would throw that carbon back up. But there's specifically on our website, if you go to rxdestroyer.com, there's a section that says Knowledge Center, and there's a drop down that says Test Data. So you can go to our test data that will show you there's no leaking or leaching of, we've had our product also tested with like aqua assays. That's where they put like minnows and fish in this area and, product that has been already rendered non-retrievable and see if there's any effect in the aquatic systems and things like that. So all that test data can be found there for anyone who's a, science geek. Most of those words are way beyond what I can spell. So I just point people in the right direction.
How do you tell like individuals or companies, how do you help them gauge what size they need?
So there's a couple of different ways. First of all, we talk about the main goal of that destruction. So let's just use a nursing home as an example. When they dispense meds, how many dispensing locations do they have? Is it 3 machines that do this? Is it just one room that does this? Because typically wherever those dispensing machines are is where the collection will happen or be brought back to. Because a hospital, for example, without RX Destroyer, they just don't want 500 collection bins throughout the whole hospital. And sometimes that happens. So if you want to use smaller bottles, you could put 500 bottles throughout the hospital and it's going to end that chain of custody or destroy it within that room. But this prevents people walking down hallways with all these drugs and all these different components. But a lot of times, wherever they have their electronic dispensers is where we start to say, hey, how many of these do you have? Or how many patient rooms or beds do you have? And then we also look at how much they go through a month, which those electronic machines will tell them that. It'll say, hey, this month we went through 1,000 of this, particular pill or whatever it may be. So we can get an accurate gauge, to say, hey, on average, they go through 3,000 pills a month. It looks like they're looking to dispose of 20% of that medication. They should use this size if they want to turn this bottle over quarterly. So in that world, a lot of times, again, there might be compliance check boxes where every 90 days they have to swap that bottle out or they have to close a log out. Like every 30 days is common as well. So it just depends on the goal or the SOP of that hospital or location. But we can absolutely help estimate with like, hey, the market in general, this size is what goes here and this size is what goes here.
Right.
I'm trying to think of how, so I'm very competitive.
Oof,
Greg, I think is pretty chill, but I'm pretty competitive. So when we do drug take back day in our county, we have 5 towns. It's a little bit of a competition, like whose town collected the most unwanted meds. So I'm thinking like, this is great because we do hear those complaints from the police that, 2 officers have to drive 2 hours and then they have to wait in line and then, and so sometimes they shorten the drug take back day. And so this would solve that problem. But how are we going to make it a competition between towns?
Well, so one of the things that I would think about is this may be a good time to go into drug take back day.
Okay.
Because this may lead into a competition.
All right.
that I'm seeing, because I think it's something that the industry challenges to do anyway. There's a struggle there to get good data.
Yeah.
I just think in general, it's a challenge. Drug take back day started for the right reasons, and I think it is good to have. So that's my disclaimer.
Yeah.
However, where I think we could do more is between the 3 of us, if any one of us had more than, let's say, cold meds, or maybe something that was prescribed to me, like a Tylenol 3 or an antibiotic of some kind, I would be open to saying, I'm probably not bringing that to drug take back day. I don't really have a high interest in my neighbors seeing me walk out with my hydrocodone. I don't have a high interest in the police maybe knowing that I'm getting rid of maybe leftover Xanax if that was what was prescribed to me. I'm not interested in running into somebody I know from church who's the volunteer at the Dropbox location, seeing me get rid of Adderall and they know that I don't need Adderall or whatever the case may be. I've subjected myself to all of these reasons to just stay in my house and not go. The other piece of this is, you know, if it's elderly or someone trying to do the right thing and they want to get rid of cough medicines or, you know, it could be opioids too. I mean, people will do that. But again, to get rid of what I think is focusing in the addiction space and the overdose space, I would be shocked to see any actual data that shows that there's a significant amount of those opioids being brought back to a police station. It would blow my mind to say, yep, you're right. Of the, would you say 4.5 pounds, to say there was 5 ounces of this dangerous substance. Could be, you know, morphine, fentanyl, xylazine, hydrocodone, any of those things would blow my mind to see somebody walk into a police station with those and voluntarily give those up.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Where a competition could come in is, I don't know if this will show up on the blur or not, but this is our 4-ounce bottle. Send this home with the community. Let them take this into their own medicine cabinet and then challenge them to dispose of the stuff that they wouldn't bring to the police station, or they didn't want the neighbor to see, or the friend from church to know about, whatever the case may be. That's why we go to the doctor, because of doctor, you know, patient privileges, right? That's why we feel safe when they close the door. We don't feel safe when I'm taking my drugs, whether prescribed or not, to a police station. And to make that change, if we could get these 4 ounces into the home through your 4 counties or 5 counties to be able to say, hey, how many of these can we pass out? And then let's just say there's a monkey survey attached to it that we ask you to click 2 buttons when you're done. Just, did you use the bottle and did you put opioids in it, and see who could collect the most surveys. That's where I see a competition coming in, because then you know you're doing something besides collecting NyQuil and Tylenol that was over the counter from a QVC or a Walgreens, and really keeping that stuff out of the water and the soil. And that leads into the accidental doctor, right? Because I was absolutely guilty of being in a position where I could have played accidental doctor because of all the sports injuries I've had over the last 10 years. ACL, MCL, broken arm, you know, nose surgery, gash in my leg, you name it. I've had all these surgeries over the last 10 years. You should have seen my medicine cabinet before I knew something like this existed. 2 things was, 1, I wasn't going to flush or drain it, because again, I'm a nature guy. And then 2 was like, well, if I get hurt again, because that seems to be a trend in my life, do I really need to go pay the $40 copay if I could just leave this in my medicine cabinet? I literally have had enough injuries where they're going to go, walk it off, take this pill, you're good, see you later. I know that it's not broke. Okay, I'm going to need this pain reduction. And then I'm just self-diagnosing, because again, I told you I was YouTube certified. Now, what if my neighbor comes over and says, hey, I slipped in the yard, hurt my ankle. I know you break everything. What do you got in your cabinet for me? All right, I'll save you the $40 copay. Here's a couple of these. I have now exposed someone else to potential harm, addiction. Who knows where those pills travel from there? So I don't know where my pill actually ends unless I destroy it. And that's the difference of a drug take back day collecting drugs, or sending somebody home with a bottle that they can do in their own home and say, just get rid of it. Do it in privacy. No one will know. There's no taboo. There's no, you know, there's nothing wrong with doing this in the privacy of your own home. And then your challenge can be to see who can get the most surveys back and collect the best data, which has always been a challenge.
So I love that idea. I meet with some people statewide, and this week actually they were talking about how we don't know how many opioids we're collecting. We could just be collecting Advil and Aleve. Who knows?
Yeah.
And they were talking about handing people a survey, and I was like, oh, that people are not. It's bad enough they're coming and have to look at us. They don't want to, like, then even if it's anonymous, where they're going to take it from them. You know, I love that idea. So
yeah,
if I can, I'd love to share it with the other people in the state. Maybe we can get a statewide competition.
Yeah, we actually have a program that we do as well with our marketing team, that we make these hang tags that actually go over the bottle. So you can have them custom, you know, could be state related. It could say whatever coalition name needed to be on it. And then there could be a QR code that directly links to a monkey survey. So the technologically savvy folk of today's world can just, whoop, it pops up. You don't even have to put a name in. You just say, did you use it? Click yes or no. Did you put a prescription in it? Yes or no? Like super anonymous in general, so that we know that someone's more willing to give us satisfactory data that we could then use and say, wow, drug take back walking to the police station brought in 4 pounds, but we just saw that we got rid of 2,000 prescriptions in one day because it was done in the home. And when they came to us, they got the bottle, they got the education to know what happens if they were to flush or drain this or play accidental doctor.
Awesome. Now, from your title, it's pretty obvious that you, although you probably would sell, just to individuals, but you're looking for the partnership with coalitions, with organizations, with industries. How does a coalition or a hospital, how do they get involved? How do they hear this? What's their next step once they say, you know what, I heard this on the podcast?
Yep.
What's the next step?
Well, one, they can always reach out to us directly. And then based on the need, we have a lot of partners through different distributorships on the commercial side. And then we call it like that .org or that fellowship side, right? If it's community involved, first responder involved, .org, .gov, they can reach out to us directly. I guess you can categorize it as like a tax exempt. If that rings a bell to whoever's listening, we would want you to work with us directly, because not only do we work with those individuals directly, but again, we'll provide that education, training posters. There's a lot of stuff that we will custom do for them. And our goal is for it to be long-term. That's why that whole term of like strategic partnership is there. I can go to a hospital and sell a widget. I'm trying to change that community through partnership. When is your event? How many people are going to be at your event? What type of marketing piece would be effective at your event? Those are the things, because again, drug take back starts out as a good concept. And then as we've talked today, we understand that there's possibly even an additional or better way to do it. Same thing with marketing. Once we talk to an organization, learn about it, learn who the audience is, learn who they're trying to target, that's where we can figure out how to partner the best with them to say, let's tailor this so we hit your audience so they want to do this, so they want to make this change. When you go talk to a teenager, it's very different than you talk to an adult or you talk to a child. You have to tailor that message. So we want to be as effective as possible so the product gets used, you get your data, and we actually save somebody's life.
I love this.
Too.
I liked it before, but now I like it more.
All right.
Well, I don't know. I didn't understand it as much as I understand it now. I think it's a great product.
I agree. I think it's something we can definitely use in our community. I think that figuring out a way to get the individual size in the hands of,
if someone's listening, just some family, and they're like, oh, I wish I had some, can they just purchase one little bottle themselves?
So there's a couple avenues for that. We sell a 4-ounce bottle that can be found in most Walgreens. So they could check there. You can check online first. A lot of times you type in RX Destroyer and it will show up. There are resellers that sometimes sell on Amazon. We kind of suggest looking into who the sellers are, because again, it's a third-party reseller site, so we can't verify all of that stuff, but that's how a consumer could find the product. And then potentially there's a few other sites that we could direct them to if they really needed something. A lot of times where it's very common is after a loved one or someone has passed away in the home, and there's all the leftover medications too. So those are calls that we get, and we still encourage people to reach out and call and try to source the right way if they're struggling with a police station to take it back, or wherever the stigma to take it back, or whatever it may be. A lot of times even calling a local hospital, the nurse may have an answer of where it could go, and things like that too, or their local coalition. I mean, that's the main goal, right? Is that they would be able to reach out to and have a good relationship in the community with that coalition to say, hey, can you get us something? We heard about RX Destroyer. What would it take for us to get a couple of those?
I'm all on board. I
Yeah.
think we've made a strategic partnership right here.
Yeah, I like it.
I've like got a plan to how we're gonna approach our director about this in my head.
You gotta
Yeah,
be-
I would say the biggest thing for RX Destroyer when we look to partner too is it's someone who will take the conversation to the front with us,
Mhm.
or that's already there and is looking for us to be a backbone or a support, or that's really understanding where we're trying to go with that conversation, because we know that the number one way to prevent this stuff is to remove the stigma
Mhm.
and then use RX Destroyer to clear those medicines, away from misuse. I was just at RX Summit, if you have ever been. It was an incredible event for us. I won't use any names, but I talked to an individual that probably for not probably the first time in my career, but the first time in a long time, I just wanted to hug somebody, a genuine, like solid, good stranger, to give this person a hug. And they were talking about all the things they've overcome with addiction. And unfortunately, in our world, it can become dangerously numbing when
Mhm.
you hear this every day.
Mhm.
It can become dangerously numbing. And so you still go through the motions of, like, there's still emotion and feeling and all that stuff, but it doesn't affect you like it first did the first time. You're like, oh my gosh, 4 years in, you're like, yep, there's another tragic life, loss of life. Let me rephrase that: tragic loss of life that we didn't do enough to try to prevent. This individual, before they were incarcerated, they were actually getting their narcotics through an incinerator, where we send the drugs to
Oh,
get incinerated.
Wow.
So the assembly line would get shut off or powered down, or the heat would get shut off.
Mhm.
And this product then would move through like the job was completed.
Mhm.
And then he would just pick it up on the backside and be on his way.
Wow.
He said he lived a great life for about 12 years.
Mhm.
And then it came to a screeching halt. And, he lost friends, family, loss of life, all these different things. And it was probably, and I'm trying to remember the exact things. I apologize if he ever hears this, but I think he said it was probably his third overdose when he woke up to his sister, when he almost lost his life for the third time, that he actually decided he had to make a change. And it's because his sister, who he didn't have a great relationship with, showed up and was standing over him. It was like, you either can die, get it over with now, or like, you're coming with me and we're changing your life.
Mm.
We're doing something different. But today he's an advocate. He trains police on how to be sensitive to these conversations. He trains, mass groups of people. So he's completely, flipped. And that's somebody you're like, that's the partner that I want, because yes, he went through the tragedy and the experience, but he's at the forefront of trying to reduce that stigma, to say, look me in the eyes and tell me I'm not worth saving, kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And that's the partner we're looking for, is to say every life has value, and we need to figure out how to make an impact wherever we can, wherever someone will listen. And if someone's not listening, we got to keep pushing until they do.
Wow.
That's great.
That's it. That's it right there.
Mhm.
That's the exact point. Wow, Jordan, this has been great. I'd be wrong if I didn't ask you to please let everyone know the website so they can check out RX Destroyer for themselves.
Yeah, it's just www.rxdestroyer.com. And then if anyone ever wants to send me an email, it's just my first name, JORDAN, at rxdestroyer.com. And I'm happy to connect you with, from our marketing team to customer service team, set up education for you. However I can help you, I'm willing to do it. Just reach out. That's the first step.
Awesome. Thank you for all this great information.
Yeah. Hey, it was an incredible experience with you guys. You both were wonderful, and I appreciate it a lot.
We appreciate you adsorting all that.
Yeah, adsorb. Adsorb. It's going to be your new favorite term.
That's right. Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much,
Thank
Jordan.
you, Jordan.
All right. Take care. Thank you, guys.
I'm Polly, and you've just listened to Totally Preventable.